Pendula Shabangu, aka Noms, and if you are joining me for the first time, I'd like to say welcome, and I really hope that you do get to stay. And if you are coming back, I just want to welcome you back. Do remember to subscribe, to hit the like button, and to also just do comment in the comment section below so that we can engage. I really would love to engage with you. I wanted to share today particularly on my experience of working with an NGO. I know that this is a very important topic to be touching on because I believe that working for an NGO really taught me some lessons that I'm going to carry with me for the rest of my life. And these are lessons that actually just propelled me into my future, you know, that are guiding me even just in my work ethic. They are guiding me in so many different things that I endeavor upon, especially when it comes to my professional life. And so I worked for an NGO for 10 years, you know, so yeah, I know that's that's actually quite a span. So I worked, I mean, like right out of high school I started volunteering, and then from volunteering just really got absorbed into the organization. And I really, you can imagine, for 10 years, you know, being there for an entire decade, you get to experience so much, you get to learn so much. And for me it was such a pleasant experience, you know, and I just really wouldn't change that for anything. It just set me up for life. And I'm thinking, maybe if you do at some point decide to maybe start an NGO of your own, or maybe you're working for an NGO, even if you're not working for an NGO, I just really sincerely believe that the lessons that I learned are important for anyone and everyone, you know, to actually just really help them in their lives, in their professional lives, in their personal lives, you know, even just in terms of their interpersonal skills. And so I've actually decided to divide this up into two parts. And yeah, so today I'm going to be talking about part one. Okay, so the first thing that I learned is you know, through working for an NGO, particularly for the NGO that I was working for, because it was a faith-based NGO, I learned that it is so possible to start something incredible out of nothing, literally, you know. And you know, there's been much conversation just about, for instance, you know, they talk about how God created everything out of nothing, you know, and then we actually later on come to find that he actually created everything out of a word. So it wasn't out of nothing. So that's the first thing that I wanted to talk about, is the fact that as long as you have a word, as long as you have a word from God, as long as you have a vision, as long as you have a dream, when there's just something that is stirring up inside of you, you know, it is very much possible. You know, sometimes we're thinking, I need to have this, I need to have, you know, these resources, I need to have, you know, you could literally be the only person who's starting up something. So you don't always have to wait until you have like 5 people who are signed up to your vision and to your dream. You don't necessarily have to have like $1 million, you don't, or pula or rands. I just kind of got a bit there because I have like a number of currencies that hang in my head at any given time. But you know, you don't have to have like all this money to get started. You know, sometimes it's great that, you know, you can actually get funding. You know, you can apply for funding and stuff, and people who believe in your dream, people who believe in your vision. But I know for anyone who has started anything at any given time, it's a bit more challenging to get people to subscribe to your dream, to your vision, because you might have this incredible thing in your mind, but then it doesn't necessarily mean that people are, you know, always going to sign up to it and say, you know what, I want to be a part of what it is that you're doing. So for me, working for the NGO that I worked for, it really taught me that, and it was such an important thing, because now being able to relate it in my own life, I just hardly, you know, when I want to get started with something, and I know that the Bible talks about how you need to count the cost, and for me, you know, in terms of the cost, it's not always necessarily financially, and that's not to mean that finances are not important, because they really are important. But then it's, you know, for me, it doesn't always stop me from starting the things that I from starting the things that God has placed on my heart. So, that's just to really encourage you to say, you know what, you might have a dream, you might have a vision. The first thing that you need to do is just to write it down and just map it out and say, this is what I want to do, God, this is what I'm believing you for. Because when God has placed something in your heart, he has every intention of helping you fulfill it. He's not saying, you know what, take it, run with it, and then I'm going to be disassociated from the thing that I've placed inside of you. It's his dream, it's his vision. The only thing is that he's actually living it out through you. He's doing it through you. And so you always have to go back to him and say, God, you've given me this dream, you've given me this vision. How do I go about ensuring that I actually fulfill the thing that you've placed inside my heart? And the second thing that I learned working for an NGO was the skill of fundraising. Now, this is definitely a skill that I believe anyone should be able to have. It comes in handy in so many different areas of life. And if you're someone who owns an NGO, who runs an NGO rather, if you're someone who is getting ready, maybe who's thinking about starting an NGO, or even if it's not necessarily an NGO, I really thoroughly believe that the skill of fundraising is a very instrumental one to have. And because I just had to think outside of the box. And of course, I didn't do this by myself. I did it with a number of people that I was working with in the department as well as within the organization. And it was also quite fun, which I think that's where the fun in fundraising comes from. We were able to just think about so many different things, so many different ways of raising funds. We had different things such as car washes, we had sponsored walks, we had movie nights, we had where people would donate certain things for the sole purpose of us reselling them, and so we were able to do that as well. And even just selling old furniture, that someone feels like, okay, this could actually work for me, and they could refurbish it and do something really pretty with it or something really good with it. And so it was really, really incredibly fun. And because the organization that I worked for worked primarily with young people, so youth and children, and so young people are always just so much fun, and they just make everything so much fun. We would like even with the car washes, there'd be music and they'd be so energetic, and we'd have like maybe a braai afterward, just sort of like to thank them. And yeah, even with braais, actually, that was one of our fundraisers, and it was just a number of things. And because when you work for an NGO, you have to be raising funds, not just for the activities and events that you do, but also for the actual operations, because not a lot of people or potential sponsors and partners are looking to, they're knocking down your door looking to actually just support your work, the work that you do. Most people are very much interested in supporting once you've already gotten started, so that they can be able to know what it is that you're doing and what it is that you're capable of. And even though, like I'm saying, I worked there for about 10 years, and at the time the organization was, I think, in its 20th year or something like that, if my memory serves me correct. I'm not really getting the date correct, but even just with being reputable, and so on and so forth, you still have to do a lot of work in raising funds. And so for me, I really believe that fundraising is a skill that is going to help me just in so many of my future endeavors, both personally and professionally, in business, and in everything that God has laid on my heart. So if you're that person perhaps who likes to run away from the task of fundraising, I would urge you not to, because it just helps you to think outside of the box. You become a salesperson. You have to advertise, because I remember one time we were selling stuff from the container, you know, because we'd have people shipping in stuff from, you know, mostly from the US. We'd be shipping in stuff, we'd send in stuff, and you know, so we had these containers where we'd put stuff in, and some of it, you know, I mean, we got to use it, and then sometimes like when things get worn out, then we put them back in the container. So we had like, you know, the stuff in the container, and this was for me, I think, one of my most meaningful fundraising projects that I've ever gotten the opportunity to work on, because I worked with a team that had come in from America. There was about, I think, 20 of them. It was really fun because I got to delegate, and you know, they also had a team of their they had a team leader of their own, and so we were tag teaming, you know. So I was the person who was from our end saying, okay, now move this and, you know, do that. So I mean, it was all sorts of stuff. It was furniture, it was appliances, it was you know, old mattresses, it was, you know, just so many different things, and we're just clearing out this warehouse, you know, that had you know, so many things, had accumulated so many things just over the years. And so for me, that was quite fun. And then we had to price the stuff, and people came in. It was really fulfilling, because even the amount that was raised, you know, it was a good enough amount that was able to go into the organization and to do some meaningful stuff with it. And so I was really fulfilled at the end of it. And you know, undoubtedly, I think one of my favorite things about fundraisers, or just those kind of activities, is, you know, the aftermath, you know, being able to just chill and just, you know, have a braai or have whatever it is that you're doing and just sort of have fun. You know, we didn't always do that with everything, you know, but that is a good culture to actually do, because, you know, the people who are helping you out, especially if they're volunteers, they, you know, it's great if you are able to offer them some sort of incentive. And so we were able to do that, and for me that was absolutely fun. So that is another thing that I really would encourage you to look into. Fundraising is such an important skill. And the third thing, which is really tied into fundraising, not really, but they're tied in, was, you know, working for an NGO taught me that you can do so much with very little. You know, you just had to think outside of the box, you know. And sometimes we tend to think that I need all of these different things, and, you know, in order for me to get started, I need all of these different things in order for me to do the things that I want to do. And, you know, the reality is that sometimes you don't have those resources before you, and the work still needs to go on. And, you know, I'm not really just only talking about money. There are so many different resources that you need. And I think just like with any working professional, anybody who's in the work field, or even just the students, you know, we just go online and we do a lot of research. How do I do this? You know, you might not have the knowledge, because knowledge is also a resource that you might need, to be able to do the things that you want to do. And so sometimes you don't have the knowledge to be able to do, you know, a couple of things. And so being able to just get online and just research and say, okay, how do I do this? How do I go about doing this and that? You know, then you gain those knowledge, you gain those skills. And so, yeah, that was the third thing that I learned, you know. So it just branches off of even fundraising, is the fact that you can do so much, you know, because I think that sometimes we have excuses and, you know, not really saying that it's not important to have those things, but you actually realize how much you can go without, you know, and actually create something out of that very small thing, okay? And we're able to just take, you know, things that we had used before, sometimes just recycling. I mean, of course, depending on the context and what it is that we're using, we're able to do that. So that was the third important thing that I learned working for an NGO. And the fourth thing that working for an NGO taught me is creativity. I learned how to think outside of the box. I learned to think and to work and to operate outside of the box. When you hit a dead end, you can't just say, you know what, that's it. I'm not going to be able to go further than this. You know, you try a different way of how this could potentially work, and then you try another one, and then you try another one. You just really become so creative. You research ways of how this one thing that has always been done a particular way, how you can actually do it a certain way as well. And also, because when I was doing research, I would come across ways that certain things are done, in different countries, and then just having to make it relevant to where I am in Botswana, it was so very much interesting. It seems like a very small thing, but then you come to realize that there are certain things that work in certain places that are not going to work here in Botswana. So, obviously you might be in a different part of the world, and that is something that is very important for us to realize, the fact that to make things relevant to where it is that you are, because a certain idea might work, but it has to be, thought about a bit more thoroughly in order to be able to make it relevant to wherever it is that you are. Sometimes we have like these brilliant ideas, maybe because we saw them being done in a certain place, in a different country, in a certain environment, but then it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work in a different environment. Even for example, like, I'm talking about having worked in an NGO. Maybe you work for a different kind of company, and so what works for an NGO might not necessarily work for the kind of company that you're working for, whatever kind of company it is. And so, yeah, I really learned to be creative. I really, really, really learned to be creative, and I'm glad as well that it's a skill that I have in my arsenal. And then today, last but not least, working for an NGO helped me with visioneering. It's called Visioneering. I'm not even certain if it's like an official word. I know I've read a book called Visioneering before, and it was really incredible, on the book of Nehemiah. But Visioneering, because I worked for founders of the NGO who were such visionaries, and one thing that I never forget is that the co-founder of our organization took it upon himself to share the vision over and over and over and over again. And so for me, having worked in the position that I worked in, because I worked in different positions over a period of time, especially the last one as public relations officer, I had to know the vision of the organization, like inside and out. You could wake me up in the middle of the night and just ask me, what's the vision of this place, and I would tell you. And our vision is not just some abstract thing that is over there. It also translates to what you do on a daily basis, and it's so important to know and to have a vision. And so for me, on everything, the journey that I'm taking, I'm constantly asking myself, what is the vision of what it is that I'm trying to attain? What is the vision for my life? What is the vision for the businesses that I'm trying to get into, and so on and so forth. And it just has helped me to narrow things down, because that's what a vision does. It comes off as like this big thing, and it's so far off, and you have to like bring it down, and not like scale it down, but just bring it to where it is that you are. And so I really learned to appreciate the power of visioneering. It's one thing to have something in your mind, and it's another thing altogether to actually apply it in real life. And so I was able to see that it's possible to have a vision and also to have it executed, and also, like I said, to to understand what all goes in a vision, and visioneering, because it has its own different elements. And so for me, all the things that I'm doing, like I've already talked about the fact that I do Diamond Unearthed, and I've seen how that started off in a particular way. It started off, I don't want to say small, but it started off the size that it was, and it's definitely growing. And that is a part of visioneering, that you start with something and just allow it to grow. But the most important thing is the fact that you start. How well acquainted are you with your vision and where it is that you want to go, where it is that you believe God is taking you? You have to sit down and be prayerful and just talk to God, because God is so big. We cannot limit him. He's just so great and so mighty. He created the universe, for heaven's sake. And so, we shouldn't dream small. Our vision shouldn't be small. And so for me, I learned the power of just thinking big, thinking outside of the box, visioneering, appreciating the power of a vision, and actually running with it. So today we're going to end it right there with the 10 things. I'm going to be talking about 10 things, and so today I touched on 5 things. And so the first thing was the fact that you can start something out of nothing, in a nutshell. Like, you can start it with just that vision, with just that dream, with just that one thing. You can actually start something incredible out of something that seems small. The second thing that I learned was the skill of fundraising. And the third thing that I learned was the fact that you can do a lot on a minimal budget, or even just with very limited resources. And the fourth thing that I learned is creativity, just thinking outside of the box, and just, whenever I run into a wall, just realizing that, this wall can be broken down, or there's a different way of doing something. And then the fifth thing, which I feel for me was definitely the most important thing, is visioneering. I hope you learned something today. Do like, if this video actually spoke to you, if this topic spoke to you. Do also subscribe to the channel so that you can keep on getting more content. And then I really would love to hear from you in the comment section. Do you work for an NGO? Did some of these things actually resonate with you? How did you feel about it? And are you getting ready to start something that is similar to that? If it encouraged you, how it's encouraged you, I really would love to hear from you. Anyway, this is Nombendula Shabangu, and I'll catch you again next time.